In the previous video, we discussed how you can set a solid foundation using vision statements and objectives. But how do you know whether or not you're on track to meet your objective? And that's where modeling metrics comes in. So let's take a look at how you can use Vistly to do that. So we left off here with this objective to become the preferred vendor for higher education student curriculum planning. If we expand it, we'll come to our first key result, which is increase the number of US-based universities paying for perfect fit education by 25%. This is a revenue target. And one thing that's pretty cool about Vistly is you can nest these key results and break them down into smaller inputs. So here we have a product metric, which is increase active university ratio by 50%. Now let's take a look at a couple of things. So if we open this sidebar, you'll see that there are a couple new fields here for metrics. You can set a metric status, which indicates the risk level. Is it at risk, progressing, or on track? You have the metric itself, where you can set the values, your start, current, and target. If you have multiple updates to your metric, you'll see a timeline, which shows how your metric is changing over time. And then down here, I like to do this with my metrics. So if there's a formula involved, I like to just detail that here. So we have active university ratio, and that is equal to the number of universities that completed the onboarding workflow and launched something called the enrollment portal, divided by the total number of universities registered. So because it's a formula, we can break that down into smaller metrics. And this is where I like to use KPIs. So we have the number of universities that completed the onboarding process divided by the total number of universities that started the onboarding process. And if we want to improve the active university ratio, we could increase the number of universities that start the process, but that's not going to improve the ratio. So we want to focus on this KPI, which is increasing the number of universities that complete the onboarding process. You can see that we're using labels here just to indicate business metrics and product metrics. You can add those up here, and you can create new labels on the fly by just typing the name of your label and then selecting create below. So let's close this. Okay, so we identified that we want to improve this KPI. And you can also see, before we dive into the submetrics, we can look at this metric field here. So if you set a lower threshold or an optional upper threshold for your KPIs, it'll show this little arrow right here. So if we're below the minimum threshold, it'll go red. If we're within the range, so I'll update this, you can see that this went back to being gray. Okay, so let's expand this. So how do we improve the number of universities that complete the onboarding process? One way to model that with onboarding is you can break it down into the multiple tasks that users need to complete to finish onboarding. So in this example, we have profile and contact information, curriculum mapping for the universities, student roster integration, and launching the student portal. So if we have these 4 steps and we start collecting data around how universities are engaging with each one, we can start to determine where we want to invest more time. So we can see that many of the universities that have come through in this cohort have completed the profile and contact information, but very few launch the portal. And maybe to launch the portal, you have to complete these 3 steps. So we can take a look at this one here, which looks like it's the lowest, has the lowest completion rate. So curriculum mapping, so the number of universities that complete the second step of the onboarding process. Okay, so that's how you can model your metrics, and yours are obviously going to be different than this example. But one other thing that I want to quickly show is how you can, if you have large KPI trees or several key results, how do you know at a glance how things are performing? And that's what this metric view supports. So you have the 3 columns here, metrics that are at risk, progressing, and on track. And then you can go through each one and see how they're connected. And then you can dig into the details here, which we'll get into in the next video.